The Vancouver Titans were pretty much unanimously considered the worst team in there, and the second worst team a bit over the Los Angeles Valiant for a long time. But why did this happen? Everyone remembers the days of 2019, where the Titans were right up there with the San Francisco Shock on the top of the world. How did it all go wrong? Well, to answer that we need to go a bit back in time. The year is 2020. The Titans had just come off a disappointing Grand Finals appearance where they were swept by the Shock. However, the team had incredible talent on it still. They had a good first week, but soon showed signs of trouble. The reason? The org wasn't giving them suitable living and practice facilities, allegedly giving them a basketball training facility to stay at. They also didn't want to spend as much money on salaries. Obviously this put odds between the players and organization, culminating in Vancouver dropping their entire roster and staff and resigning a new one in a rush. This didn't go over well as they floundered massively, only really succeeding with Shockwave. They fell out of playoffs and had a brutal off-season, where they lost two talented DPS in Shockwave and Sunner to Philadelphia and Paris, and they had to rebuild. Now, while they had to create the new team in a rush, most of the players were on a previously established team in Second Wind, so they had some synergy. However, their pickups, Lynx from Houston and FRD and Fire from Atlanta, and later Turu and Changxi didn't have that luxury. So they looked marginally more disjointed going into the league. Their main issue is budget, I would say. They are pretty much the version of Los Angeles Valiant. They signed a team with the intention of pretty much spending as little money as possible. Hence why throughout the season, they had the league minimum of 7 players and 2 coaches. It wasn't as bad as the Valiant as they actually made use of their whole roster, but still. They didn't want to pay for any star players. The main notable ones are FRD and Lynx, but neither of them are stars. There had been rumors of them signing Agilities, but it fell through. So, rather than keep their Second Wind core together and improve from there, they signed most of a new roster and dropped the rest to save money. Now, another factor here is mental booming. I brought this up in my Valiant video, but having the same players on the field and losing again and again definitely can cause some depression and lack of motivation. And for many of these players, this was the second season in a row where they could barely find any wins. It led to even some of their better players like Dalton and Shredlock to look poor. Now, let's look at their roster. It is clearly a downgrade from even last season and just isn't good enough when the rest of the teams have leveled up to this extent. Shockwave was a major blow to the DPS line that Lynx couldn't relieve. Turu was a good pickup though, it let Dalton stay a hitscan specialist and he did improve. Their tank line was mediocre. Changxi and Shredlock were decent, but couldn't stand up to most of the rest of the league. FRD was pretty mediocre as well, but he did have some experience on the Reign before being benched for Hawk pretty fast. But their supports are the worst part, I would say. Rulf was astoundingly bad. He didn't fail to die first even in the Bread Bowl. He is easily the worst flex support in the league. Fire is pretty bad as well, but nowhere near that bad. I don't want to sound like I'm throwing Rulf under the bus, though he was by far the worst player. The rest of the team was genuinely worse than most of the rest of the league, and that brings me to my third and final point. The rest of the league left them behind. The league was incredibly competitive this year. You had 4 or 5 teams at or near the top and the rest of the region was still good with solid upset potential. The only team that was their level was the London Spitfire. Yes, they got the upset win over Boston, but that honestly doesn't say too much considering they got dumpstered by Washington and the Shock right after that. Nowadays a clearly budget team isn't good enough to keep up with these other powerhouses all vying for the title. In the end, they faced similar issues as the Valiant while not quite as bad. They signed a middling team and weren't willing to invest into them and they crashed and burned. At least they had a decent Countdown Cup. Thanks for watching and remember to like and subscribe for more. I upload daily Overwatch League and Valorant content and I'm trying to hit 100 subs by Season 5 so any subscription helps greatly. Thanks.